Should you support the British police? That's the topic of today's video, and the short answer, if you want it, is, well, they don't always make it particularly easy for an Englishman to do so. The long answer is the rest of this video. And I started thinking about this topic because I saw a tweet the other day by Tim Davies. Now, I should just give a little disclaimer. I'm not trying to start some kind of YouTube rivalry or YouTube beef. Tim Davies is, of course, another YouTuber. He's a really good guy. He's got a great channel. I watch it all the time. I would absolutely go for a beer with him. His military career was longer than mine. I can say all of these things, totally respect him, and also totally disagree with him when it comes to this topic. As I said, I'm not trying to start any kind of YouTube beef, just have an amicable discussion and disagreement, I suppose. I think that's enough of a disclaimer. Let's get into it. Okay, so what exactly did Tim post? Well, he was responding to another tweet, which was about 3 police officers who responded to the Southport incident receiving an award. And I just want to say that what those officers went through was no doubt completely horrific and traumatic, and they do deserve an award. And he said, "I have no time for people who do not want to support the police. Can you imagine having to do this?" And as I say, yes, having to do that, extremely difficult, extremely traumatic. I really do have a lot of sympathy for those officers. In fact, it's not the only story in the media at the moment about police officers having to do difficult things, right? Being on the front line, because we have the story of 3 Pakistani men who assaulted police officers in Manchester Airport, specifically assaulted female police officers. And of course, their own police force wanted to throw them under the bus for using excess force, which I don't think is right. I think it's shameful. Even the media was gearing up to throw them under the bus. Anyway, it just goes to show that actually a lot of frontline policing can be really, really difficult and challenging. And that's what I think of, and I think that's what most people imagine when they think of policing, those difficult jobs. And yet ultimately, that is what we trust the police to do. That's what we pay them for. That's what we give them special powers to do, because after all, they are policing by consent, by our consent, right? And so getting the difficult stuff right really should be the bare standard. Yes, they're having to do some very difficult things, but that's what we expect of them. And yet at the same time, they get a lot of stuff wrong. And that is completely inexcusable. I'm going to go through a few examples where I think the police have really, really got this wrong. And in fact, I could make a 3-hour video about this, and that's not a good sign. Okay, first up is a guy called Julian Fawkes, and he was actually a retired police constable. Now, he went online and he made a post which he said something along the lines of, the pro-Palestine protesters are literally 1 step away from storming Heathrow and looking for Jewish arrivals to attack. Now, whether that's actually true or not is kind of irrelevant. Julian believes it and he has every right to post it. But what do you think the police response was? Yeah, they sent 6 police officers round to his house, raided it, arrested him, handcuffed him, took him away, searched through all of his things, declared that his books were Brexity and right-wing. I mean, it's completely insane. For a single post online, you get 6 police officers at your door doing things like that. It wasn't like he even specifically named a person and made an accusation against them. He was just talking about the marchers in general and his opinion and how dangerous he thinks it is. And yet that was the police response. How am I meant to support that, Tim? A couple of months before that, 2 parents were arrested for complaining about their child's school in a private WhatsApp group. And you'd be forgiven for thinking that this kind of thing doesn't actually happen very often, but I think you're wrong. I think we only learn about it when the person it happens to has a big enough audience to kick up a fuss. And speaking of which, a couple of weeks ago, Brendan Kavanagh, another YouTuber, not a political YouTuber, he posts piano videos, he had his farmhouse raided, him and his wife were taken away whilst their young children were left on the farm. Why do you think this happened? Well, it's because Brendan complained to his bishop that the bishop had sent a priest, a Catholic priest, to his local area who was a convicted something offender. Now, Brendan wasn't very happy to learn this news because it wasn't disclosed to him by the bishop, and Brendan had previously left his children in the custody of that priest. Can you imagine how that would feel? So yeah, he complained in strong terms to the bishop, and what did the police do? They showed up at his house, arrested him, arrested his wife, left their children in the farmhouse. Completely shocking stuff. Absolutely awful. Brendan didn't threaten the bishop or anything like that. He just complained in strong words, right? How am I meant to support the police when they're doing things like this? I just can't, because it's so obviously wrong, right? Listen, I could go on and on with stories like that of the police sending a whole bunch of officers to go and harass someone who posted something online, or actually half the time it isn't even something that they posted online publicly. It's like a private communication. It's completely bonkers. And you've got to factor in that all of this is taking place whilst last year in 2024, half of the country didn't see a single burglary solved. That's a big problem. How can I support the police using 6 police officers to go and harass parents who are concerned about the welfare of their children when the police don't even solve any burglaries? I mean, that's completely crazy, right? I don't support that. And listen, I haven't even started talking about the riots, okay? The riots, the summer riots of last year. And I will say that this wasn't all the fault of the police, the injustices that took place there. A lot of it was down to the duty solicitors being totally incompetent. It was down to the courts, the judges, the CPS, etc., etc. But ultimately, the police arrested those people in the first place. Take Peter Lynch, for example. The police arrested Peter Lynch because he was shouting at them. Okay, and that's a matter of recorded fact. Okay, he didn't damage anything, he didn't hurt anyone, he didn't participate in any violence or anything like that. He shouted at them that they were scum and also that they were protecting, you know, bad people, let's put it that way, okay?
Yeah. Scum! Praying for our children. I pray for my children. I pray for my children. I pray for the shield. I pray for my children.
And he went to prison for years and he died in prison. Now, as I say, that's not all the fault of the police, but then let's compare how the police dealt with Peter Lynch versus how they dealt with, say, the Islamic community in Birmingham. Because it's a bit different, isn't it?
Even given there were so many of them clearly armed, I mean, would you do the same if it was an EDL type situation?
So we've policed in response to the intelligence that we received at that moment in time. What I would say is that the vast majority of people that attended that protest yesterday did so law-abidingly, and they did it with the right intentions. There were just a small minority of people that attended there and were intent on causing either criminality, disorder or fear within our communities. What we saw was a response from our communities where they were trying to kind of make sure that that was policed within themselves as well, and trying to deter people from taking part in that disorder. And as a result, we've been able to go on, gather that evidence, gather that information. We have made arrests. Well, we've made an arrest this afternoon. We continue to try and make arrests in terms of those people that were involved in those disorders yesterday.
Well, that's a bit different, isn't it? Because there's no riot gear there. It's all about community policing. And in fact, it's not even about community policing. It's about the fact that the community, the Islamic community, will police this within themselves. Completely bonkers, right? 2-tier policing on full display there. And yet I'm meant to support the police. Yeah, well, unfortunately, I just don't, because that's obviously egregious and wrong. In fact, it's clear to me that the police have given up on solving crimes in a fair and dispassionate way, and instead they've moved to a new objective, which is trying to maintain order and social cohesion at all costs. And that might sound like a noble aim, that might sound like a good thing for them to try and do, except when you realise that the way they do it is by appeasing the most aggressive and violent mob, whichever that happens to be in any given circumstance. And that is not the kind of policing that I want to see in this country. It's not what we had in the past, and it's certainly not what I want to see going forwards. This is a very dark and bleak period of British policing. One more thing that I have to mention in this video, because it's a personal bugbear of mine, and that's the abuse of powers, or the abuse of the law. And in particular, I'm referring to the Errorism Act of 2000. With a T. I'm sure you're smart enough to work out what I'm talking about. And that law has been abused. That law is completely necessary, but that law gets abused frequently. Callum, formerly of the Lotus Eaters, now he has his own channel, a great travel channel. I'll link it in the description of this video. He's been detained at the airport using those powers numerous times. Okay, Paul Thorpe's friend had the exact same treatment. Tommy Robinson has been detained using those powers. And of course, I don't understand the full details of why they were stopped, why they were detained, why they had to hand over all of their devices and all of their pins and passwords, okay? But I find it very, very hard to truly believe that the police think these guys are terrorists. I just don't believe it. And if you don't believe that, then you have to come to the conclusion that the police are abusing those powers. Probably, I suspect, to try and shut up right-wing thinkers and right-wing voices and kind of scare them a little bit and put the feelers on them. which is really not good. And again, it comes back to that point I made earlier, that the police will now do anything to maintain social cohesion. That's the goal. Not policing fairly and appropriately, but they see it as, well, if I can shut up some of these right-wing voices who are talking about the decline of our country, if I can scare them off from making that kind of content and talking about these issues, then I can better maintain social cohesion. That's not right. I don't support that. That's not the kind of policing that I want to see in my country. Now, at this point in the video, I've got absolutely no doubt some of you are screaming at the television saying, I know someone who's a police officer and they're a really good person. They would never do this. Or, I am a police officer, or I used to be a police officer, and I would never do anything like this. Except, I don't think that that's actually true. I mean, your friend probably is a good person, or if you are the police officer, you are actually a good person. But we kind of have an answer for why good people can just continue to follow orders and keep doing bad things. All the way back in the 1960s, there was an experiment done, a psychological experiment, and it's called the Milgram experiment, if you want to go and look it up. And they were trying to assess just how far someone will go to keep following orders. Like, will they go all the way to the point where they end someone else's life for no discernible reason just because an authority has told them to do so? And the answer is a resounding yes. The way the experiment worked is there would be a scientist, so he's in on the experiment, and there's a person who's being questioned by that scientist. Every time that person gets a question wrong that the scientist has asked, the test subject would press a button to electrocute that person. Now, the person was hidden behind a curtain, but they made all the right noises. They were screaming, etc., indicating that they were in pain every time they were electrocuted. But the scientist made clear, it doesn't matter. If they get a question wrong, you have to press that button and that will electrocute them. Not only that, increase the voltage every time they get one wrong. Now, the person who was doing the screaming was actually faking it, of course, because it's only a psychological experiment, right? But the test subject, in many cases, kept going all the way to the point where there was no more screaming to be heard, and they just kept pressing the button. No more screaming, implying that that person was either unconscious or had died. Okay, but for some reason, because this scientist, the authority, was saying, just keep pressing the button, they just kept doing it, right? The scientist would ask a question, the person wouldn't even respond anymore, and they would just keep pressing the electrocute button and ramping up the voltage. Totally insane. And so we have a good explanation for why, maybe I haven't explained that in a very good way, but you can go and look it up yourself. But we have a good explanation for why good people can continue to do bad things. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about, but there's a part of human psychology which is just deferent to authority and will just keep doing what you say. I don't think everyone is like that. I think a lot of people break away from that. Maybe this is a little bit arrogant, but I don't think I would continue to do that. I would realize pretty quickly that what we're doing here is wrong and object to it. Actually, in the military, that's something we teach everyone, even our most junior soldiers, that an order must only be followed if you think it's a lawful order. And we teach them all about the laws of armed conflict so that they can determine what is and isn't a lawful order. Anyway, I'm getting a little bit sidetracked. The point is, good people can do bad things. And the Milgram experiment just kind of shows, I think, what has gone wrong with our policing in many cases. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about all of this. Maybe you do support the police. Maybe you're a police officer. Maybe you don't support the police. It's all good. I want to support the police, right? And I guess that is what Tim Davies said at the start. He said, who don't want to support the police. I want to support them, but I only want to support them because they're doing the right things, because they're doing their job well, because they're protecting the public, because they're doing what we've asked them to do, because they are actually policing by consent and not simply showing up at people's houses because they complained about their child's school in a WhatsApp group, right? I want to support them, but I want it to be because they're doing the right things, not just blindly because, oh, they're British police, isn't it? So I support them. No, that's ridiculous. Let me know what you guys think. You might notice that Annie isn't with me. It's a little bit too hot. Actually, I think she probably would have been okay today. There's a nice breeze, but yesterday it was like 30 degrees. So I tend to just walk her when the sun goes down. Ideally, I would walk her in the morning, but I don't always get up early enough. There's a bit of a bold confession. So I'll walk her when the sun goes down. She does get walked. She's totally fine. She's a happy doggy. She sits in front of the fan all day. And yeah, anyway, I disagree with Tim fundamentally, okay? Tim may well change his mind. He may well still totally disagree with me. That's okay. I think he said a silly thing. I think we all say silly things. If you don't believe me, go and have a look at my Twitter. I say all kinds of whimsical and silly things over on there. And I would love to have you. In fact, you get a bit more free speech on Twitter, I think, than you do on YouTube. So my thoughts are a bit more raw and real. Maybe you'll enjoy it, maybe you won't. But I would love to see some of you over there. And yeah, till the next one. 5 minutes of just chatting random crap, sorry. Right, please do leave a like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in a future video. Bye.